Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, we'll be diving into the return of the U.S. men's national team. We'll also have our international roundup, which includes all the international games going on over in Europe, CONMEBOL, all sorts of stuff in terms of World Cup qualifying. We'll talk about the Queen's Gambit, maybe some community, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you on this Tuesday? We're recording on Tuesday, not Monday. Tuesday, November 17th. Thank you for bearing with us as we took an extra day just to kind of get in the second U.S. men's national team game to be able to talk about that. How are you, Mosse, on this Tuesday, November 17th in the year 2020?
I'm doing well. We have a laundry list of television things to talk about. The main event is your review of the Queen's Gambit. So let's save that for last. And I'd like to run through some stuff on my end first, which is a couple of things that you recommended. I went back and watched. I did watch the documentary about the Challenger explosion, which I thought was very well done, very powerful, very infuriating at times. Also, the Netflix true crime doc, Who Killed Maria Marta, which I feel like we could do an entire podcast on the Argentinian judicial system because the courtroom scenes were some of the most bizarre television I've ever seen in my life.
Agreed, 100% on that. I'm not giving anything away, but it obviously is. It focuses a lot in the courtroom scenes in Argentina, and there's a point, I kid you not, where there is a woman testifying, and she's talking about a conversation that she had with a friend, and and she's saying one thing and implying that the friend is lying in terms of her response. And the next scene we get is her friend in the courtroom, almost pulling up this chair next to her, rebutting. It is the strangest thing in the world relative to the courtroom scenes that we've seen in our court of law. It actually cuts right to the core because you actually have this, what amounts to a conversation and a debate and almost an argument as part of the proceedings. That they call it, I think they call it an oral lawsuit and an oral type of thing, and it is literally people talking not just to the judges, but to each other. It's a very, very strange concept, but I can see how it can get to the truth, but I can also see how it can lead to all sorts of confusion.
I am also off and running on season 4 of The Crown. I've watched the first couple of episodes. So far, so good. We are up to the 80s. So it's Margaret Thatcher, Princess Diana. Interesting stuff. I am chugging along on The Undoing, which is that Hugh Grant, Nicole Kidman HBO show. Watched the 4th episode this past Sunday. 2 more to go. I gave a review last week that some, including my father, interpreted as lukewarm. But I didn't mean it like that. It was just I was coming off talking about Queen's Gambit, and I didn't want to have the same exact level of excitement for this show. But it is a very good show. I highly recommend it as well. And also, I watched the first 2 episodes of this new HBO show, Industry, which is about this group of young people who are trainees at this big London investment firm. It's got a bit of a Wolf of Wall Street kind of feel to it. I haven't totally figured out what to make of this show yet. 2 episodes in. I'm not sure how much I like it, but it's keeping me interested. So that's a lot of stuff on my end, but none of it compares to the Queen's Gambit, which I still say is one of the best shows of 2020. And I know you finally got around to watching it.
Yeah, I would not say it's one of the best shows in 2020. I don't know the name of the young actress in it, but she's wonderful, and I know there's multiple actresses depending on her age. But for the most part, this actress does a wonderful job. And once again, we don't want to give away too much, but guess what? There's not a whole lot to give away, to be quite honest with you. Remember how Seinfeld used to be. It was defined as a show about nothing. This is almost a movie, a series. I know it's a series, but it's just an extended type of movie about nothing, or the something is there, you get it, and then it just doesn't quite move anywhere for me, and it's fictitious. and in a strange way, it hurts that it's fictitious in the way that I view it. So I was not as I watched the whole thing and I thought it was interesting and well done, but I was not as into it as you seem to have been. What grabbed you about it, other than, for those that don't know, it involves a young woman who goes through all sorts of trials and tribulations from childhood to become a world class and world champion chess player.
Yeah, I found her to be a very compelling character, and I love the chess scenes. Even though I'm not a big chess guy, I didn't completely understand what was going on, but still, I thought they did it in a way where it made it very dramatic. It's funny. My dad told me that back during the sort of Bobby Fischer period, it did set off this chess craze around the world. And even in Brazil, walking around the streets, you'd see people at parks and beaches sitting at tables playing chess all day. And so that very last scene of the show where she's taking a stroll around Moscow, I believe it was, and it comes upon these Russians just playing chess in a park, it actually rang true to him because that's actually the way things were. So I thought that was interesting as well. It sort of captured an interesting time in the world where chess was this global phenomenon. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is in a long line of movies and TV that have tried to make something that traditionally and on the surface does not seem that sexy or exciting, and try to make it exciting. I don't necessarily think that it does. I didn't leave saying I have to play chess and this is the most exciting thing in the world, or that I have to go and watch one of these chess things. I mean, I think that wears off after a while. Yes, the initial amazement of going to I don't even know what they call it, a chess tournament, I guess, and seeing, all the inner workings of how something like that happens, and dispelling some of the myths and the preconceived notions that you may have. That only lasts so long, and then you're still looking at two people moving the chess pieces, and I get it. I played chess, but it didn't, like I said, it didn't go over the way that it went over for you. I will say, before we move on, and I know we've extended this, but indulge us, please. I have started and I'm knee deep into the second or third season now of a show called Community. Have you ever heard of this show?
I'm aware of it. I don't watch it.
Okay. So again, this is either the best show that has ever been written for television, it's episodic, or the most ridiculous show ever. And it vacillates back and forth between the two. And that's probably why it was popular, in that it had an extended run, but not over popular, because I guess it is irregular. And erratic in the way, and inconsistent in its greatness. And that's all I can say about that. It stars Joel McHale, Chevy Chase is in it, Donald Glover, who I'm told also goes by the name Childish Gambino in his artistic form. So a really good cast, a really interesting ensemble that I didn't watch at the time, and I just kind of started watching it and have now not stopped, and I kind of have to go through it all right now. But I'm at a loss as to whether this is the most amazing show or the worst show that I've ever seen in my life. So I don't know if that's an endorsement. I don't know if you should check it out, but maybe for those curious out there, you can answer that question for me as to what it actually is.
One last bit of television news. Do you remember an HBO show earlier this year, The Outsider?
Yes.
Based on a Stephen King novel. It was this murder mystery, and people were getting accused of committing crimes, and it was actually these evil alter egos and spirits and such. And I know you're not shedding a tear for this because you were not that big of a fan of that show. And frankly, I didn't love it either. I liked it more than you did, but I didn't love it. But HBO announced that it's not coming back for season 2. And I don't know if you remember this, but it ended on a bit of a cliffhanger because Holly, the woman that was trying to solve this whole mystery, in the very last scene, she's in the bathroom and she notices that she has the cuts on her arm that would indicate that now she's been enveloped by these evil spirits or whatnot. And although we didn't love it, this show got very good ratings and very good reviews, and everybody assumed there would be further seasons to come, and HBO announced it's not to be. So that was actually somewhat surprising news in the television world.
Well, I think at the time we said that show jumped the shark massively at the end when it got all surreal and space agey and ridiculous. But you know what has not jumped the shark, Mosse, is the U.S. men's national team. Are you ready to light this candle, my friend?
Yes.
All right, let's get it. Okay, so as I said in the open, we delayed the recording this podcast for a specific and I think good reason. We finally saw the U.S. men's national team in 2020 return to play 2 games, one in the UK against Wales, and the second in Austria against Panama. Undefeated, if you will, with a 0-0 result against Wales, and then followed up by a 6-2 trouncing of Panama. Last time we saw the U.S. team was at the beginning of this year. So it's been almost a year, basically, a lost year, if you will, for Greg Berhalter and company. And now they come back on the field. Mosse, would I be right to say that the general reaction from the United States soccer community out there relative to this return is one of continued excitement, one that we are justified in our excitement and in our hope and in our belief and in our optimism regarding this team. And I think maybe more importantly, just a general sense of it's fun to watch this team. Now, whether it's fun to watch this team just because they're finally back, I think it's more so it's just fun to watch this team. And that fun that has been missing for a while is at least back for the time being. And that is a good thing. Certainly in 2020, we need as much fun as we can possibly get. Is that an accurate portrayal of the way that people are feeling right now, do you think, about this team?
Absolutely. And I share that sensation. I thought this was a very positive couple of games. I knew it wasn't going to be perfect given the circumstances, but you just wanted to come out of these 2 games, like you said, with this sense that all the excitement was validated, that there is a lot of talent here, a lot of potential, that there are the pieces for Greg Berhalter to do what he wants to do. A while back, I remember you saying he's trying to paint the Sistine Chapel with crayons. But I think now there's a sense to carry that analogy further, that he does have a nice palette to work with, some very good painting materials. And now the things that he's trying to achieve don't seem that far-fetched.
Yes. To your point, I do think that Greg Berhalter's set of tools, if you will, is much greater and I think of much better quality than a year ago, 2 years ago. And that's a good thing because he is trying to do something different. Okay, let's separate out the 2 games. Let's take the game against Wales first. And by the way, and I said this on the broadcast, in November 2020, despite all of the challenges and the difficulties and obstacles that have come our way in 2020, you should still expect your men's national team to beat the likes of Wales, and certainly this type of Wales team that they put out, and Panama. Notwithstanding the fact that Panama qualified for the last World Cup and the U.S. didn't qualify for the last World Cup, there is still a recognition that when we play against what I would consider inferior opposition, that we should find a way to win, even while we're working through it. They didn't find a way to win against Wales. And the interesting, I think, part and narrative when it comes to that game is that Greg Berhalter played a false 9 in the form of Sebastian Lletget. Not really fair to Sebastian Lletget, but you go and if you're on the field, that's great. But there was not a traditional type of striker there. We know that Josh Sargent, who was originally scheduled to be in camp, wasn't there. And the likes of Joaquini was on the bench, and Soto, and they will come into play later on. First off, Mosse, what was your reaction to the decision by Greg Berhalter to play this false 9 type of formation?
It was the only strange thing he did in the 2 games, frankly. As you mentioned, Sebastian Lletget wasn't even in the original squad. He gets drafted in because Josh Sargent doesn't get released by Werder Bremen. And it's almost like Berhalter felt like there's so much youth here from the midfield up that I just need a veteran in there to be a stabilizing force, and I'm going to shoehorn him any way I can. And it just didn't really make any sense. I would have liked to have seen one of those young strikers in the squad get a chance in that game also. And so, yeah, that was, like I said, it was overall very positive 2 games. That lineup choice in the first game was the only negative thing that bothered me.
It would be one thing if it was just a personnel decision that I might have disagreed with, but this is kind of fundamental. Okay, we recognize that 2020 is a lost year. Greg Berhalter is the first person to tell you that it's already a limiting type of situation to be a national team coach. And then you only have a couple of games here and very limited time with these players. Why? I don't understand why we would try to do that, especially when we have, albeit young and inexperienced, nines and strikers that play that position in camp. And if you're not going to do it, that's like something that you add to your arsenal further on down the line for just a rainy day type of situation. And while it did rain against Wales, I don't think that this was that rainy day type of situation. So to your point, you're absolutely right. This was a head scratcher, and more than a head scratcher. Okay. However, but you move on. People that did themselves, that came out of this better. I'm talking about Serginho Dest proved that at the right back position, which is where he played in this game, he is one of the most important players on the field, especially in the way that he not only gets forward, but is given the ability to get forward and carte blanche basically on that right-hand side. So he was great. John Brooks showed that he is the starter at that left center back position. I thought he was wonderful in distribution. Once again, Wales didn't throw a whole lot at us, and as a matter of fact, they just kind of gave us the ball time and time again, which is fine. You play the team that's on the field. I did not think Conrad de la Fuente showed well. And look, you have that label of being a Barcelona player. You expect more. Is that fair? Yeah, I think that is fair. If you're on the books at Barcelona, we know that it doesn't necessarily translate all the time, but somebody like Barcelona has seen your quality, and he did not have a great showing. So he did not improve his stock. And all that left side also, Anthony Robinson at left back also did not help his case, and just kind of showed us again how that left back position is something that we haven't filled now for a number of years, and we still haven't filled it when it comes to the national team. Gio Reyna, in his first appearance for the national team, at times looked tentative, but didn't look out of place. And I think that's the best that you can hope for Gio Reyna coming into a situation like this. Didn't phase him by any stretch of the imagination, but he didn't dominate. And he certainly didn't look like the player that we see in a much more familiar setting when he plays for Borussia Dortmund. But that's going to take time. I think that the Weston McKennie, Adams, and Musa central midfield there, that's really where we looked at as, hey, this is something to build on. In particular, Weston McKennie, who was everywhere and everything, and proved once again that he is one of the first people you put on. Tyler Adams to a lesser extent, but not any less of importance. He just was a little more understated in the way that he plays, but equally as important. And then Musa, as a possibility, both as a player and developing, that was a nice little trio that we saw there that continued on into the second game. Am I missing anything when it comes to the players there and the game against Wales?
No. I mean, I know you want to go game by game. I have some big picture thoughts that encapsulate both games. So
okay, well, let's just go right into the next game there, where Greg Berhalter did change and actually play a 9 and one that was in camp in the form of Gioacchini. And it resulted in 2 goals. Now, look, he again started Reyna, again started the same 3 in the midfield. Dest moved to the left-hand side and proved that he is both the best right back and left back that the United States men's national team has right now. Cannon started on the right-hand side. I thought he was good. I didn't think he was great. Stu Holden seemed to think he was great. I'm fine with Reggie Cannon playing on that right-hand side, but it's certainly not Dest-esque yet. And I don't think that Tim Ream and Matt Miazga in the back did themselves any favors in terms of pushing for starting positions when everybody is back and that whole contingent. Zach Steffen continues on. I didn't think he did anything wrong. And we scored goals. And that's what we wanted in terms of the difference between that first game to the second game. Created 1 shot against Wales, and then we score 6 goals and start bombarding Panama. Panama's not a great team. I get that, but we can use that excuse on everything. They scored the goals, not only the goals in terms of Gioacchini scoring his 2 goals, Joaquini, sorry, I couldn't get that pronunciation right. And then Gio Reyna scoring from a set piece. So check off striker scoring goals, check off set pieces. Nope, not a problem. And a young player like Reyna probably felt good for him. Also check off substitutions. You put players into the game to make an impact. And when Soto comes in, scores 2 goals, and Lletget comes off the bench and scores a goal, all in all, a overall positive performance against an inferior opposition. So congratulations to the U.S. men's national team for doing what you are expected to do against inferior opposition.
Well, first off, this, I suppose, is a good problem to have, but it's something to think about nonetheless moving forward. If there's an MLS player that people seem intent into shoehorning into this lineup, it's Jordan Morris. You hear people say, well, okay, it's going to be mostly European based, but Jordan Morris is a guy that has to be in there. And in order to do that, Reyna has to be one of the midfield 3. The projected lineup I've seen is Adams, McKinney, and Reyna as the midfield 3, and then Pulisic and Morris on the wings and a center forward. And the emergence of Yunus Musa does throw a little bit of a wrench into that, because now I'm seeing a lot of people say, oh, this is the midfield 3 we got to go with Adams, McKinney, and Musa. And that pushes Reyna into one of those front 3 positions. So now presumably you have Reyna and Pulisic floating behind the center forward and no room for Jordan Morris. What do you make of that?
Well, first off, Jordan Morris doesn't have to start. And by the way, Gio Reyna doesn't have to start. In my ideal 11, I think that Musa is, we talk about the recruiting process for some of these dual nationals, and he still hasn't committed to us. But I think that he proved that it is worth our time. It is worth our investment in terms of that recruiting process to continue down this road with him. Some players, it's just, we're not going to spend our time and resources doing that. I think this player has proven very, very quickly that this is someone, yes, he is worthy of our courtship, if you will. But that doesn't mean that he's going to start. I like that trio in the midfield, but if you're asking me my ideal lineup, I think Gio Reyna, if you believe that Gio Reyna should start, then for me, you have to start him in the middle, because that's where I think he is most comfortable, and that's where I think he's going to get most touches, and that's where I think he's going to do the most damage. I don't think that playing him out on the right, and even when we say play him on the right, the minute the whistle blows, he goes wherever he wants and he cuts inside, and Dest does a lot of that overlapping on that right-hand side. But I still, if I had to make a lineup today that included Gio Reyna, I'm putting him in the middle and part of that 3, and Musa's out.
And it's going to be interesting to see how well Reyna and Pulisic mesh, because I did think Reyna was at his best in these 2 games when he drifted towards that left side, and that's where Pulisic likes to operate. So that is something to consider. Reyna was nominally playing on the right wing, but as you said, when the game starts, he's given freedom to go wherever he wants, and he seemed to feel a lot more comfortable when he was drifting towards that left side. So yeah, I mean, it's a testament to how much talent the U.S. has that I honestly didn't find myself thinking about Christian Pulisic that much during these 2 games, but still, he is a guy that could take this whole thing to another level. And so it's very important that Berhalter finds a way for him and Reyna to be able to play comfortably together and both play at their best, and one not infringe on the other's ability to, perform at their best.
These are all wonderful problems to have. And at a time when we want and are begging for something to hold on to, and a positive story, I guess just in general, Greg Berhalter and company gave it to us. And I think that's what comes out after these 2 games is that, the kids are all right. And this is something that, as I said, is worthy of our attention and our continued focus and belief that it's going to get better. Now, we're not going to see this group probably till March. Rumor has it, and Greg Berhalter alluded to it, that there's going to be another game in camp at the end of December. Obviously, that'll involve mostly domestic players. And again, there's these 2 groups that at some point have to coalesce and meet in the middle. And to your point about Jordan Morris and everybody else, there might be some other options that we're not talking about here, either up top. Because listen, as much as Joaquini comes in and is now anointed the new goal scorer and star, if we had a World Cup qualifier tomorrow, I'm not comfortable starting him. There's still plenty of other players out there. And by the way, some of those other players, and you can run through the list, whether it's Jassy Zardes, first off, Jossie Zardes could have scored a hat trick against Panama the other day. Okay. So it's not as if in that moment we needed someone to step up and score, and he absolutely did that. But that doesn't mean that any of the other players that are out there that potentially could be a part of this team and in that position, number 9, aren't people that we should look at. I don't look at it as we finally found our goal scorer and we're headed to the promised land and he's going to take us there. We've added another potential star, but another potential goal scorer to that list. And it's not a long list, and it's not a very deep list right now. So that's a good thing. All right. So
let me just say on the center forward position,
yeah, go ahead.
It's interesting. I'm still very high on Josh Sargent. And I know that when you have guys now playing for clubs like Barcelona and Bayern Munich and Chelsea and Juventus, a guy on Werder Bremen can slip from the consciousness a little bit. But I still think he's very important. And Josh Sargent panning out would really raise the ceiling of this U.S. team the next few years. But I do think the forward position is where you enter into this dilemma of short-term versus long-term thinking, because all these other young guys, Pulisic, Reina, McKennie, Adams, Dest, they're already the best players at their respective positions. So are they going to be better in 2026 than 2022? Probably, but you don't feel like you're sacrificing the present for the future by starting them. The forward position is where Greg Berhalter does have an interesting dilemma over the next year or two. Is it more important to give somebody like Josh Sargent reps, or still go with somebody like Josie Altidore, who on that day might give you the best chance of winning? Part of me thinks, well, if it's all about the future and young guys and this fresh start, you go with Josh Sargent. But he's going to have competitive matches coming up and qualifiers and games where the result really matters. And so that is a tricky dilemma for Greg Berhalter.
Mosse, this infuriates me. And I know you're not necessarily saying this, but there is this notion out there that we should be doing what is best for 2026 and almost bypassing 2022. No. Look, I'm not saying we're not looking at 2026, okay? But 2022 is crucial. First off, we need to qualify, and we need to do well there, okay? Now, not at the expense of 2026, but Greg Berhalter's job, and I said this before, is 2022. First and foremost, that's what he needs to be thinking of. And I don't think that the American soccer community wants to mail in 2022. I don't think that we should, and I don't think we can afford to do something like that. And that's not what you're saying, though. I know I don't want to put more words in your mouth, but there is this notion out there, and you did kind of raise it in your comments.
But even the 2022 World Cup is still 2 years away. So who the better player is now might not be. Are you confident that come November 2022, Josie Altidore will be still better than Josh Sargent? Because I know you feel he is now. If the U.S. had a game tomorrow, you would trust Altidore over Sargent. But in 2 years, that's 2 more years of mileage on his legs, 2 more years of Josh Sargent development. So that's something for it doesn't have to be that far thinking.
Fair enough. And I do think, and I said this on air the other day, that at some point, Greg Berhalter and his staff need to decide who the horses are, who they are going to back, and who is going to be their group. I say it all the time. It's not the best players. It's the best collection of players. And whoever that is, it doesn't matter what I say, you say, the fans say, any of the media says, if that's who you believe is your best group, then you go with it and you give them a run and you deal with the mistakes that are going to be made. It doesn't mean you're not flexible at times. It doesn't mean that you can't have players that just aren't working out and you have to make a change. But that core group, you have to know it and recognize that there might be some very, very good players that aren't part of that group because you are headed in the right direction that you believe is the right direction. That's okay. That's okay. Other comments about this, because I have a few more.
Well, the last thing I had written down here is the Serginho Dest dilemma, which I think is interesting. I think first off, Greg Berhalter has to determine if he's significantly better at right back than left back. And if not, if you think the difference is negligible and he can be just as effective on the left as on the right, then it's a no-brainer to me. You play him on the left and you play Reggie Cannon on the right. But if you think not, that Serginho Dest is clearly a better right back than left back, then boy, you better feel like Reggie Cannon is like such an upgrade than whoever the left back would be if it's an Anthony Robinson or Sam Vines, to justify taking one of your best players in Sergiño Dest and playing him quote unquote out of position. So that fullback situation is going to be very interesting to see how it plays out the next couple of years. How do you see that?
Yeah, and at some point, I mean, it's still a very small sample size, a wonderful sample size when it comes to Dest, but at some point you kind of want to see him pinned back, and you want to see him in this defense on their heels and facing players that are as fast as him, players that are as clever as him, and that attacking part of his game that is such a huge part of it. And one of the things that we love about him, if that gets curtailed, what he ultimately looks like. And it may be, to your point, that he is world class at a right back level, but just, mediocre, not mediocre because he's better than mediocre, but passable, I guess, at that left back position. And is that enough? If his entire description and quality and value does rely on his ability to get forward, is he able to do it in equal amounts on the right side and the left hand side? I don't know. And like I said, we don't have a whole lot of data to kind of show. I mean, he plays for, he's played for everywhere he's been. He's played for the best teams, whether it was in Holland and now in Spain. And we kind of need to see him in those moments where things aren't going well. I'll be interested to see, like you said, what that ultimately looks like when it comes to the right or left back position, or if somebody steps up that we don't know about. Anything else, Mosse, on this team or these games?
Well, just one last comment on Greg Berhalter.
Yep.
These were games 20 and 21 in charge for him. He's already coached in a Gold Cup and a Nations League group stage. He's had 2 games against Mexico. And yet the vibe, it almost felt like it was his first 2 games in charge. Because of the pandemic and because of there being all these new players and the sense that this is the start of something new, he got sort of swept up into that. So I don't know. Are you comfortable with the fact that he more or less gets a mulligan for everything that's happened so far, and now we're kind of going to really start to evaluate him again?
There is kind of a reset going on. And look, it's not his fault. It just might be the 2020 biting us in the ass again, and this is just kind of what we have to do. I will say a couple of things about this team. I was really interested to see the way the American soccer community reacted to Weston McKennie. And now this is a Weston McKennie who's playing in Serie A and playing for Juventus. And yeah, oh, ragazzi. What was interesting to me, and I tweeted it out, is the irony of what is seemingly, from where I stand, what is seemingly resonated with the American soccer community is not necessarily this progressive, romantic, modern, new type of archetype. It's actually a throwback and much more old school in what he brings. You talk about your fight and your spirit and your personality, and these are all traits and characteristics and behaviors that were part and parcel and kind of ingrained and expected of this team and in the kind of DNA. And so at a point where we're talking so much about evolving and moving forward, what ultimately stands out is something that's homemade and something that has, I guess, been there all along, but maybe been missing of late. The other part is, there's this notion that we are now seeing a team with swagger, and that we are now seeing a team that's creative, now seeing a team that plays with fun, and that never happened before, which is not the case. There are plenty of times and moments, maybe not yet to this extent, in that this is going to continue to evolve, but this reimaging and reshaping and almost recasting of history that we've never had skillful players, or we've never had players that have oohed and awed us before, or we've never had a player that's megged another player or something like that. That's just revisionist, and that's not necessarily the case. And that in no way means that people shouldn't be excited and happy about the things that are happening and the swagger that's out there and the collective swagger of this group. And then my final thing, Mosse, and I'll give you a chance to rebut or add to any of this, is the assessment. And I think you mentioned it, Greg Berhalter right now. Greg Berhalter, it can be argued, is the most revolutionary and evolved and different type of coach in terms of his approach that the U.S. men's national team has ever had. This is not necessarily I'm not here defending Greg Berhalter, but I think it is very, very clear now that he has come in and wanted to do things in a very different way. And as I said, a much more evolved and in certain ways revolutionary way. And I think at times he's taken criticism for it, and it's still a work in progress, and we still don't know if it's going to come out on the other side. But I do think that takes courage, and I do think that takes a self-belief. And I do think even after 2020, he has proven that this is what he is going to do, and this is that hill that he is going to stand on and die on if he has to, because he believes in it. And I appreciate that. And I respect that. And in the criticism of Greg Berhalter, and there's plenty of opportunities to criticize him fairly, but in the criticism that he is regressive, or that he doesn't have the wherewithal or the imagination or the creativity to do what needs to be done to bring us to the quote unquote next level, I would take another look at what Greg Berhalter has done relative to what has been done in the past. Mosse, I know that's a lot, but anything pique your interest?
No, I agree. I'm a fan. I know it's an unpopular opinion that gets me in trouble on Twitter, but I like Greg Berhalter. He's sort of the sky is falling crowd. The last thing they're clinging to is that Greg Berhalter is going to be the one to screw all this up because he's in over his head and was only hired because of who his brother is. And so, yes, the U.S. has all this talent, but what good is it when you have a coach like him? And I don't feel that way at all. I think he's actually pretty well suited for this group, given the way he's trying to play. And so I don't think Greg Berhalter is going to be the problem here. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on him.
All right. So in summation, good 2 games. We're headed in the right direction. There is reason to justify our optimism and our confidence. And maybe most importantly, there is fun. It was fun watching this team, and hopefully it continues to be fun, especially as you mentioned, when the likes of Pulisic and the domestic players and everybody comes back in, and Greg Berhalter has some of those difficult but wonderful decisions to be made because of the depth that we have out there. All right. Well, like I said, the next game is potentially at the end of December. No idea on the details there, but we'll get those to you when they do ultimately come out. Mosse, anything else on the U.S. men's national team?
That's it.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, we'll do our international roundup. We're going to go to Europe. We're going to go to South America, and all sorts of stuff that is going on relative to the national team games as it relates to UEFA Nations League and CONMEBOL qualifying and World Cups and all that kind of stuff. So don't go away. Moving on. Okay, welcome back. We're going to delve into what's going on internationally with our international roundup. All sorts of national teams in action all over the world. We're going to focus in on what's going on over in Europe and what's going on in South America with UEFA Nations League and then CONMEBOL qualifying. Let's start over in Europe, Mosse, with UEFA Nations League. Injuries, first off, there's injuries that are going on, and this I think is going to be a story and a bigger story as we get through 2021 with both coaches and clubs and leagues as the congestion starts, and we see these injuries coming through, especially when it comes to just adding more and more games, and international games in the eyes of a lot of people are unnecessary at this time. So injuries is one of the stories going on, Mosse. Thoughts on what's going on right now?
Yeah, this whole debate rages on. Now, there are some people that are against any kind of international football right now. And I've read some pieces from people like Rory Smith and Tim Vickery that have pointed out that that's a very elitist European view. That, in places like South America and Africa, where they've sort of grown resigned to the fact that their best players are going to go off to Europe to play at club level over there. Their only time to get to watch these players up close and root them on is during international breaks and international competitions when they're representing those countries. And as Rory Smith has pointed out, actually the vast majority of smaller countries around the world are still more passionate about international football than club football. And so those are all things to consider. But that's a justifiable defense for the continuance of like qualifiers and competitive matches. Where international football then loses a little bit of the argument is we also had some friendlies jammed in during this international break. You had some of these European nations playing 2 competitive matches and a friendly over this break. And again, the explanation there is that these federations are bleeding money as well, and they have some TV contracts that stipulate that they have to play a certain amount of games, and they're trying to satisfy that. But nevertheless, that is where, the clubs can look at that and say, boy, do we really need to be playing friendlies right now? So, I mean, do you have any sympathy for that argument or no?
I guess I can muster some sympathy for it. This gets back to the conversation we had about potentially moving the 2022 World Cup to 2023. Now, I don't think that's happened. That's going to happen. I think that ship has sailed, but it is only going to get more congested. And when you are playing games that quote unquote don't mean anything, at least there's a certain segment that believes they don't mean anything. Now, in terms of a result changing your standing or qualification for something, they don't mean anything. But go ask Greg Berhalter how important these 2 games that he had were after missing an entire year. I mean, his job is to get a group of players that rarely see each other on the same page. And it's difficult in normal circumstances, and it's even more difficult now. So I would argue that he would argue that this does mean something. Even a friendly game does mean something. For the actual players, I think different players react differently. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But I think that depending on who you are as a player, that's what's relative to the value that you see in playing in a friendly game. I still see value in the international game happening, and I still see value in friendly games happening. But I can understand the consternation that's out there, especially when somebody gets hurt. Even when they get hurt in a quote unquote meaningful game, there are people that say, well, why are they playing these games right now?
Well, in terms of the Nations League, if you want to actually go through the results,
Sure.
We have one semifinalist confirmed, and it's France. They advance thanks to a 1-0 win over Portugal in Lisbon. N'Golo Kante with the only goal there. Nice victory for France over what I continue to say is an absolutely loaded Portugal side. I mean, when that team sheet came out and you see a front 4 of Bruno Fernandes, Bernardo Silva, João Felix, and Cristiano Ronaldo, and Diogo Jota coming off the bench, the offensive firepower they have. And by the way, let me stop there for a second because I want to get something off my chest.
Oh, I like it.
During the last international break, I gushed about how talented Portugal are right now. And I even went as far as to say that Ronaldo might have a better chance of winning the next World Cup than Messi. And whoever pulls the Twitter clips from this podcast heard that, thought, boy, that's a really interesting take that's going to generate a big reaction. Unfortunately, Mosse is not famous. So let's pretend like Alexi said it. And the clip that went out that week was ALEXI LALAS says Portugal has a better chance than Argentina of winning in 2022. And, it was just you reacting to my saying it, which and listen, that's problematic for you because, for all my like air of knowledge and throwing out a lot of names, very little secret, I'm kind of an idiot. Most of what I say doesn't really come to pass. So I don't know if you want my takes attributed to you, but nevertheless, for now, until it's proven wrong, I'd like to be able to keep my own takes. So whoever, Luis Aguilar, Alex Dowd, whoever was in charge of that one, I did notice.
That's funny. I didn't even see that.
Yes.
That's good. You're the man behind the curtain, pulling the levers and stuff. I am, but your puppet.
But so anyway, France advanced there in the semis. Two other countries that have really a foot and a half in the semifinals. Belgium, they beat England 2-0, goals by Tielemans and Mertens. So they're now very much in the driver's seat. They host Denmark. All they need is a point from that game, so they'll get it. So Belgium will most likely be in the semifinals as well. Italy had a really comfortable win over Poland, 2-0, goals by Jorginho and Berardi. So now they're in the driver's seat in their group. They close things out away to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I expect them to get a result there and to advance. Italy, by the way, really has something going on right now. They're unbeaten in 21. They had a perfect record in Euro qualifying, doing well in this Nations League. And it's not just the results. They're playing some really lovely football under Roberto Mancini, who, by the way, didn't even coach this game because he contracted COVID. But nevertheless, they're very talented in the midfield. They control all their games now. They're racking up some really impressive possession numbers. One of their goals in this game against Poland involved a move where there were 30 passes. And so Italy, remember, a country that also, like the U.S., didn't qualify for the last World Cup, they've really rebuilt very quickly and are looking very much like a force right now.
All right. Well, it's still Italy. So if all goes as planned here, Germany, France.
They have a very sexy Final Four because
Germany, France, Belgium, and Italy. I mean, I know you have your love affair with Portugal, but you'd be happy with that Final Four, right?
Oh, absolutely. So it's looking like it's gonna be France, Belgium, Italy, and then either Spain or Germany. And that actually, we're taping this on a Tuesday. That game is later today. By the time you hear this podcast, it will have happened. Spain hosts Germany for the last spot. Spain need a win. Germany only need a draw. Germany was able to leapfrog Spain in this last set of matches. They beat Ukraine 3-1. It was Sané, Werner with the goals. And then Spain, a remarkable match. They drew 1-1 against Switzerland. Sergio Ramos missed 2 penalties in the same game. He had converted 25 in a row heading into the match, and lo and behold, misses 2. So that allowed Germany to leapfrog Spain in the standings, and now they can play for a draw in this match. Well, Spain need to beat them. So, but either way, whoever gets in there, Spain or Germany, is great. So to your point, we're headed for a very sexy Final Four in the Nations League.
The most important question, and I will ask it of you when it comes to the Nations League, is this. Is England a good team, Mosse?
Yeah, I don't know totally what to make of the Nations League and how much stock we should put into it. And we talk about how all over the place club football is right now, international football even more so. So I'm still going to hold on to the fact that they got to the semifinals of the last World Cup. They've qualified for this Euros, and just on paper, they have loads of talent. So my overall impression of England is still positive. But you're right. There have been some results and performances where some people feel like they've lost a little bit of momentum here, that a little bit of the bloom has come off the rose with Southgate and England and what's going on with them.
I mean, look, there's no shame in losing to Belgium. Great team, but and it's interesting because we started off the pod talking about an air of confidence and fun and a return to rarefied air and a positive type of feeling with regards to the national team, and yet I sense that certainly over the last couple of weeks, there's some rumblings. There's almost a whiff of the traditional pessimistic English press and mentality when it comes to the national team. Something that I think for the most part, this England setup has avoided. And they've kind of been put on a pedestal and pumped up, and I think rightfully so. To your point in terms of what they have done, but is that cynicism and pessimism starting to creep back in with regards to this England team?
Perhaps. I know Southgate's been criticized for going a bit pragmatic lately, but Jonathan Wilson wrote an interesting piece sort of defending that approach and arguing that the dirty little secret about international football is that pragmatism wins. It's one thing in club football where you can practice with these players every day, and there you can do all these exotic things tactically and really be ambitious. But he said that sort of in international football, you kind of have to keep things simple as a coach and not be overly ambitious with what you're trying to accomplish, which was an interesting take from a guy like Jonathan Wilson, who's this real tactics guy but his in international football, at least his message is keep it simple. So he actually supports the direction that Gareth Southgate is going in. So
interesting. Well, I mean, look, pragmatism may indeed win, but it doesn't win hearts and minds, Mosse. All right. Anything else? Nations League? No.
Okay. Staying in Europe, but moving on to the field for Euro 2021 is set. The last 4 qualification playoff matches took place. North Macedonia won 1-0 away to Georgia and Tbilisi. Hungary won 2-1 over Iceland in Budapest. They were actually trailing 1-0, scored 2 goals late. Dramatic there. Slovakia 1-2 away to Northern Ireland in Belfast in extra time, so plenty of drama there. And then Scotland, they qualify at the expense of Serbia. Scotland was winning this game in Belgrade 1-0 late. Luka Jovic equalized and went to penalties, but the Scots prevailed, setting off wild celebrations amongst everybody from Ian Joy to Derek Ray and everybody else. I will say, I hate to be that guy, but it was a little much. You would have thought Scotland won the World Cup here. I know it's the first major tournament they've qualified for in 22 years since the 98 World Cup, but it is an expanded 24-team Euro.
Oh, Mosse. No, tell me you didn't do that. You're going to,
I am going to be that
listen,
guy.
when this clip gets cut, I want to make sure that everybody understands that was from David Mosse. Okay. I am a romantic and I can celebrate. Okay. And I don't have to qualify it. Okay. It was interesting. Mosse, I was watching, actually rewatching one of the 30 for 30s. It's a shorter 30 for 30 called the Ceasefire Massacre about the, and I think I have this right, the Long Island Massacre. And it's related to the 94 World Cup. The importance of having your nation represented at a big tournament, and not just as an opportunity to drink beer, although that's certainly part of it, but an opportunity to celebrate with the world and be part of that pageantry and part of that celebration that is going on, whether it's a World Cup or whether it's, more regional, like a Euros. This is what these fans, and you just mentioned that there are other parts of the world that celebrate their national team more. I would argue that when it comes to Scotland, for example, this is a country and culture that kind of looks to its national team, and that they haven't delivered, which is why they're celebrating this, to kind of spread that culture that they have and celebrate their personality and who they are through the game and through their national team. So that's why I think it is completely appropriate to celebrate this.
Well, that 30 for 30 mentioned, if we're talking about the same thing, that was done by a terrific filmmaker named Alex Gibney, who was so fascinated by the story. He then made like a full-blown 2-hour documentary about it, which is on Amazon Prime, I believe. I watched it because, remember, I just read that book by Patrick Radden Keefe, Say Nothing, about the troubles in Northern Ireland. Yep. And that incident you're talking about had to do with that conflict. And so I was on this big sort of Northern Ireland kick there, and I gobbled up a bunch of documentaries, and that was one of them that I watched on Amazon Prime. So yeah, absolutely.
But the only reason that I brought that up is the scenes of when Ireland qualified, and how important it was to the people, and obviously going over and then the game against Italy at Giant Stadium and all that kind of stuff. So I can understand. Give them a little opportunity to celebrate, Mosse, before you just completely step on all of their dreams. So congratulations, Scotland. Well done. All right. Anything else, Mosse?
Well, just to whip through South America quickly, it's tricky because, like I said, we're taping this on a Tuesday. All the games are today, so they will have occurred by the time this podcast drops. So I can't say too much about them. But just to harken back to the previous set of matches, I don't know if you saw this, but there was major VAR controversy in the Argentina-Paraguay match. It ended 1-1 at La Bombonera. Messi did score a go-ahead goal in the second half that was wiped away because when they reviewed it on VAR, they spotted a foul like 30 seconds before the goal. And so it sort of raised this whole question of how
phase
far...
Phase of play, my friend.
Yeah, it's interesting. In reading the rules, basically, Paraguay had possession and the foul occurred on the turnover. And then Argentina kept it for a while and exchanged a bunch of passes, this lovely team move that culminated with Messi putting in the back of the net. And from what I read, had a Paraguayan player touched it at any point in that move, then they wouldn't have been able to go back and review it because that would have triggered a new phase, they call it. But the fact that no Paraguayan player touched it at any point in that sequence meant that foul was still fair game to review because that was still considered the start of this sort of general phase of play. So, yeah, I mean, Argentinians were furious. I mean, technically by the letter of the law, I guess it was correct. But I mean, do you think that is a tricky VAR thing? I mean, how far back? If Argentina had passed the ball around for 2 minutes and then scored, would you have felt weird about them going back and chalking off because of a foul that occurred 2 minutes early? Like, where do you draw the line on
No,
that?
it's pretty clear in the laws about what the phase of play is. So I don't know what the big deal is. You're Argentina. Find a way to score another goal against Paraguay. I mean, they didn't, and they only got the point there, but they're still sitting pretty. They're fine. They're in second place. And like I said, we're recording right now while games are going on. But when it comes to CONMEBOL right now, it's the usual suspects. However, Colombia sitting at 7th is interesting. And look, we've seen, and just as a reminder, 10 teams, 4.5 spots in the top 4 go to the World Cup, and then the 5th place goes into the intercontinental playoff type of situation. And oftentimes it happens actually against CONCACAF. I don't know what happens this time, but right now, I think the biggest omission when it comes to that top 4 would be Colombia. You're never going to have your Vino Tinto or Bolivia's doing much. But what stands out to you when you look at CONMEBOL qualifying right now?
Yeah, Uruguay had the result of the round, this last round. They won 3-0 away to Colombia. Goals by Cavani, Suarez, and this young striker they have, Nunez, who plays for Benfica, is very good. They now host Brazil later today, a match I'm going to watch a couple hours after we're done taping here. Let's just say I could not be more pessimistic about this match from a Brazil perspective. 2020 being what it is, Chichi lost like half the players that he originally called up for this game, including Neymar. He lost both Casemiro and Fabinho, so we're down to our third string holding midfielder there, which is Alam, the Everton player. And even he picked up a knock in the last game and is a doubt. It might even be 100%. So, and then Chichi, frankly, has exacerbated the problem with some head-scratching lineup decisions of his own. So I don't feel at all good about the lineup that's going to be playing this game. Suarez is out for Uruguay. He tested positive for COVID. So, I hate to phrase it like this, but that helps Brazil's cause. So we'll see. But still, I expect Uruguay to win this game and for Brazil to end 2020 on a down note and all sorts of questions being asked about Chichi's future. By the time you listen to this podcast, this game will have occurred. And obviously, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I will be.
All right, so the 5 games that are going on right now that will have finished by the time you are listening to this: Ecuador hosting Colombia, Uruguay, as you mentioned, hosting Brazil, Peru hosting Argentina, Venezuela hosting Chile, and Paraguay hosting Bolivia. Do you think Argentina goes to Peru and gets the win there?
Interestingly enough, Peru's having all sorts of political unrest. Last I read, there was a chance of that match being postponed, but if it occurs, yes, I like Argentina to win that game. I don't like what I've seen from Peru so far. And I do like what I've seen from Argentina, these drop points against Paraguay notwithstanding. I think they're playing well under Scaloni, and Messi and company get a result there.
All right. Well, listen, nobody's going to cry for you as you cry for your Brazil team. They're doing fine. They're sitting at the top. They got plenty of talent. And when all is said and done, they're going to be there in 2022 for you to feast upon. All right, that's our international roundup for this week. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
Okay, cool. We'll take another little break here. When we come back, we'll have our Ask Alexi segment. Don't go away. Moving on. All right, it's that time again. Time for Ask Alexi. Use that hashtag Ask Alexi or Ask Mosse, and you send us your comments, your questions, and concerns out there on the old social media platforms, and we pick a few of them each week, as we have done this week. Mosse, what do the folks want to know about this week?
First up, at soccer_outlaw92. Have you done an MLS playoff preview, and do you have Sporting KC winning?
Interesting. I have done a bracket and playoff type of preview. Actually, we recorded it, and it should be out by the time that you are listening to this. So you can see me go through the entire bracket. Myself and Stuart Holden did ours. So you can see it and then basically take what we said and do the opposite and go to Vegas and win some money. So this is MLS, and inevitably there are going to be things that you cannot predict. I'm not going to go through it all, but to answer your question, I do have Sporting KC going through, but I don't have them going through to the final. We have games coming up this week. We'll be working both the play-in round that's happening and some round one that's happening. So games on Friday on Fox and on Sunday on Fox. But as far as the play-in round, you have Nashville hosting Miami, the two expansion teams. I think Miami goes to Nashville and gets the win and moves on. And I think New England hosting Montreal, I think New England as the home team finds a way to win against Montreal. So those are the teams that I have coming through. I will say this, when it comes to the matchups going forward, I think that the away teams, you're going to see more away teams winning. I don't think that home field advantage is going to be even close to the advantage that it is in normal times. And I think that's going to be reflected, not just in the fact that the home field advantage is in there, but you also have some very, very good teams. For example, I have Colorado going to Minnesota and winning. You also keep in mind that there are a lot of teams that are going to be missing players, whether it's Minnesota, whether it's LAFC, missing players that are on or have been on international duties. So it's going to be a real kind of crapshoot as to what that team ultimately looks like. And it's not necessarily going to be reflective of how good they are, because they're going to be missing some key pieces. I will tell you, and I'm going to make you go and watch this in order to get ultimately who I picked for the final. But I will tell you that it's not Philadelphia. And I will tell you that I do have NYCFC making a run. So that's my little tease there. Normally what we do is we tease people to come to the podcast to get some of the content. But since we did this for Bigger Fox and the digital world out there, it'll be out there and you can find out what I have and then make fun of me for when it doesn't happen. Mosse, any thoughts on MLS playoffs and what's about to happen here?
Well, this guy mentioned Sporting KC. I've begun my research for our games. And did you know Sporting KC had the biggest year-to-year turnaround in MLS history? Last year, they finished with the 21st overall best record in the league. And this season it was third. So that 18-place turnaround is actually the biggest in MLS history.
Really?
So, yeah.
I would have thought that Ben Olsen's DC United, they had one year where they went from worst to first or something like that. But look, you're the guru and you're the,
Well, in any event,
so I don't doubt you.
I mentioned last week that Sporting KC San Jose was going to be like a trendy upset pick. And I was right about that. I've seen so many people say, boy, yeah, San Jose is the last team you want to face in the playoffs, Matias Almeida, et cetera. And I've actually heard that so much that I'm now kind of feeling like Sporting KC is going to win that game. So yeah, for this guy that asked the question, I think Sporting KC are a very good team and could make a run and go far, but I don't have them getting to MLS Cup. I still have Seattle as I know it's the boring pick, but
that's not boring. That's okay. I mean, listen, this is the fun stuff. This is a time of the year for me, the most wonderful time of the year, which is the MLS playoffs. Anything can happen. Any team can win it. Right before we came on to record this, I was writing and recording a little vignette. I don't know what we call them, where you voice something and then we put pictures and stuff over it to kind of give you a synopsis, with some gravitas of what we're about to embark on here with the playoffs. Look for that later on this week. It's always fun because you get in a very short period of time and with an efficiency of words, you have to try to capture what the season has been. And we know that this has been a season unlike anything else when it comes to the challenges and obstacles. Which reminds me, I mentioned Philly as we were coming on air. Jim Curtin was named the Coach of the Year. And I want to send out my congratulations to him. Well-deserved, and without an asterisk, okay, when it comes to this award. What he has done for this team and for that city is to be commended and to be praised. So congratulations to Jim Curtin. Certainly one of the nicest guys you will ever meet. I think one of the smartest guys you will ever meet when it comes to our game. And there are plenty of other worthy candidates out there, but very, very happy for Jim Curtin and the job that he has done, and to be recognized for the job that he has done for the Philadelphia Union. Mosse, what else we got?
At Ramchik Key or Kai, was it ever hard to get motivated to play in friendlies, or is wearing the jersey the best motivation?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. The opportunity and the privilege and the honor of representing my country never got old. and I never took it for granted. And actually, when we get to the end of this show, my one for the road is going to talk a little bit more about it. But I often say that, and I do believe that I live in the greatest country in the world, and the ability for me to go on the field and to wear that jersey and to put my hand over my heart, to sing that anthem, and to represent this country that means so much to me, and how, and through sport, show how much I love and respect it. I would have gone anywhere in the world for that, and at any time. And were there moments that where it was challenging? Not really. I mean, let's be honest. You if you have the opportunity, and you live that privileged life of being a professional athlete, if the worst thing in the world is that you're being called up by your national team and you have to get on a plane and fly in first class to the other side of the world to represent that country, then you live a pretty charmed life. And I like to think, and I actually believe that was a sentiment shared by most, if not all, of the players. And I also like to believe that is a sentiment that continues to be shared by some players. And you mentioned, we were talking in an earlier segment about Paul Pogba and him making some comments about the family aspect that he feels when he plays for France. And it riled some folks up and ruffled some feathers in the Manchester United camp. But these are people that he knows, that speak the same language, many that have gone through the same things with him. It should come as a surprise to no one that there is an affinity, and that there is a connection, and that there is a comfort, and that there is a love of being in that environment for him or anyone else. And that is something that is special, and that is something that you want. And when it's gone, it hurts that it's gone, because you can't have it back again. It is fleeting. It comes and goes. And so what you normally find out is that as soon as you start taking it for granted, that's when it goes away. And to quote the great band Cinderella, don't know what you got till it's gone. So anyway, that was my motivation. And it's not to say I didn't get paid for it. I did get paid for it, but I would have done it for free. Honest to God, I would have. Anyway, so that's to answer your question there. Different players are motivated by different things, and I'm not naive. I understand that in this day, especially in this day where there are many more mercenary type of international players, that they might look at it as much more of a drag. And that's unfortunate. That's too bad, because I do think that if that's your attitude, and if that's how you ultimately feel when it all is said and done, that will manifest in your performance at some point, and usually at the worst possible point. But I'm realistic, and I understand that not everybody feels that way. That's just how I felt. And I hope, and like I said, I like to believe that everybody felt that way. I know it wasn't the truth, but there were a lot more that did than didn't. All right. What else, Mosse?
I went on this at Martin Sportsnet. What are you doing while Stu and John call the game?
Okay. So, my job is oftentimes in the normal setting. I'm not going to talk about, I'll differentiate between a tournament type of situation. My job, the way I see it, is much more about quality over quantity. Okay. It's about being efficient and making the moments that I have count. To answer your question, I'm watching the game first and foremost. Rob Stone and I are also, from a practical perspective, you call it babysitting, and that's not a pejorative. That's what you are doing, because you are there to make sure that things are safe and sound. And if they're not, you're there to step in. So if And this has happened plenty of times over my career where the feed goes out or the audio goes out, or there's just some sort of technical situation where they have to throw back to the studio and you're putting your jacket back on immediately, but you have to kind of be there and you have to have that safety valve there. So first and foremost, just from a practical perspective, you're there as that safety valve in case something goes wrong. Then obviously, it's my job to watch the game and to be prepared. I need to know, what the highlights are, what's going to happen at halftime or what's going to happen post game, or if there's cut-ins, what we're going to do. So I'm watching the game just like everybody else, and I'm formulating my opinions. Yes, I have social media going, so Twitter's going, and I'm watching what people are saying, and I know it's not the greatest focus group, but there is a voice that does come out when it comes to social media, and I'm engaging with people, and I'm stream of consciousing stuff that I see or that I feel, and having that interaction. That's a new type of thing relative to traditional television. It's that interaction that's happening even when you're not on camera. So those are the things that we are doing, and we're preparing. And once again, I keep saying being efficient, because we have such limited time. It's, what am I going to talk about? And it's a conversation back and forth between me and Rob. What are you going to, if it's Rob Stone or anybody else? And it depends. If it's just us, there could be 3 guys, there could be 4 people, there could be other people, it doesn't matter. But understanding how the segment is going to go, where we are going to go, the host, if it's Rob or anybody else, understanding where they're going to lead you. But all of that is being done while the game is going on. I'm also talking back and forth to folks in the control room for highlights that I may want to see, additional to the actual highlights that we have as a package. So maybe there's a theme or something that people have seen or that I've seen about playing out of the back or playing through lines, or there's a really, really important moment in the game that we kind of want to go back to after we've seen the highlights of the game and really focus in on a red card or a controversial call or something like that we really want to talk about, or something that maybe in the moment during the game wasn't seen, but with our benefit of being able to see it constantly and put it together, we're able to better assess and give a little bit more information when it comes to something that we've seen. All of those different things are happening, and we're talking back and forth to our producers. And Mosse is in our ear constantly asking us questions, provocative type of stuff, promoting stuff, or selling us on some different things, or asking us just questions that maybe elicit some kind of information that may find its way into the performance. Mosse, I think you should answer this question too, because your life is a little bit different during games than mine.
So before every game, John Strong and I come up with a bunch of in-game graphics, and he gives me instructions of, okay, when I start talking about such and such, I want you to throw this graphic on the screen to kind of support that. And so I have to be attentive the whole time and to listening to what John Strong's talking about to know when he goes down a path where, it's a cue for me to sort of throw a graphic on the screen. I tell our graphics folks what to put up there. And then the other thing is getting the script ready for halftime. Rob Stone likes to have a lot of information on teleprompter. He ad-libs a lot of it, but it's helpful to have sort of the information there of just sort of the nuts and bolts of things. And so Rob and I work together on that. And then, there's some free time for other conversations too. Like during the Panama game, myself, you, and Rob somehow started talking about which band was bigger at their peak, Van Halen or Bon Jovi. So sometimes there's some random non-soccer related conversations that occur.
Man and woman cannot live on soccer alone. Okay.
Rob Stone was also asking my opinion of the Michigan Jim Harbaugh debacle that's going on right now. So I gave him my take on all of that. So there's some other chatter that takes place during the games.
It is fun. Well, Rob and I had an argument about, I think it was, what was it? Condiments or something like that. So like you said, there's stuff that applies to the sport and what's going on, and there's other stuff that doesn't. sometimes when it's a really boring game, it might even be even more interesting than the game that you're actually actually watching. Anyway, that's a good question. So there's a little peek behind the curtain as to what's happening, and you will never see a more startled group of talent than when the feed goes out and all hell breaks loose and people are running around trying to, as we come on air, to get their jackets on. And that's when someone like Rob Stone will say, well, obviously we're experiencing some technical difficulties here, and either he will throw to a commercial to kind of get our bearings and get set, or he'll turn and say, hey, how's that first 20 minutes been so far, Alexi? And then you just kind of have to riff and go with it there. All right, Mosse, that's the end of Ask Alexi there, right?
That's it.
All right. That's a good group of questions. We're going to take one more little break here. And when we come back, I will give you my one for the road. And it will be a travel log of sorts as it applies to the U.S. men's national team. So don't go away. But we will be right back. Moving on. All right. Welcome back. We're going to finish up the pod here, as we always do, with my one for the road. We've been talking a lot, actually, on this pod about national team representation and what it means to represent your country through the national team, and how much or little it means to players. And look, for the most part, it is, after you take away all the money and the fame and all the other stuff that comes with being a professional athlete, it is, and I would venture to say, for most players, the most memorable and important moment when that happens. And certainly in the traditional sense. Maybe it's changing, but I still believe that it is. And when you see a Gigi Buffon singing the national anthem, or other players with tears streaming down their face in that moment, oftentimes it's because it means so much. It can be the culmination of a lifelong dream. It can be relative to things that are going on in your country that have nothing to do with soccer. It's so many different things, and they manifest in different ways, and it can be incredibly emotional. So many years ago, back in the 1900s, when I was playing both in Italy for club and then obviously for the U.S. team, it would have been 1995-ish, summer of 1995. We just finished with my first year in Italy, and for my team, which was a team called Padova, which is a city in the north of Italy, they had just come up. And so the only thing that we hoped to do was stay in Serie A. It got to the end of the year, and we were tied with Genoa. It was to stay up. We were either going to go up or they were going to go up. And it was a one-game playoff type of scenario. And winner take all, basically. You win, you stay in. You lose, you go back to Serie B, which is where the team had been. So I played in that game. Thankfully, we won. We stayed up. And immediately, rather than go back to Padova, because the game was at a neutral site, rather than go back to Padova, I got in a car with Sunil Gulati, who was then with the United States Soccer Federation. He had flown out to basically escort me back to the United States, because the game in Italy was on a Saturday, and on Sunday in Foxborough, Massachusetts, at Old Foxborough Stadium, the United States was taking on Nigeria. And I had committed to play. I wanted to play. And so we found a way to finish the game in Italy, drive directly to the airport, get on a plane, have that plane land in England, get on another plane, transatlantic, land at Logan in Boston, get off of that plane, get into a state trooper's car, bomb down the highway at exorbitant speeds in order to get to the game that was being played at Foxborough Stadium, get out of the car, get into the locker room, and then play against Nigeria. Now, look, once again, flying in first class, police escort, this is not roughing it by any stretch of the imagination. And I'll be honest with you, not only was it because I wanted to play with the U.S. team, but I kind of wanted to do this thing. I grew up watching Live Aid and watching Phil Collins play a song in England and then take the Concorde and play a song to end the festival in Philadelphia, I think it was. So that whole concept of this move appealed to me. But at its core was the fact that I got to represent the U.S. and that I would do anything in order to have that opportunity. And it was wonderful. It worked out like a charm. There could have been a lot of deviations and problems along the way, but it all worked out. Not only did I win the game in Italy, but I also made it to the flights and everything was on time, and I got to represent my country again. And that for me is and will always be, not that game, but the opportunity to represent my country is and will always be the thing that I am most proud of. And it remains to this day a huge part of my life and an important part of my life that I look to. And I can just tell you, if you ever get the opportunity to do it, take it, because you never know when it's going to go away. So anyway, that was a fun 48 hours, I guess. And I certainly don't regret it. There was a huge party back in Padova to celebrate the remaining in Serie A that I missed, and I don't regret it for a second. So anyway, Mosse, anything before we go?
That is it.
I want to thank everybody, as always, for tuning in, for downloading, for subscribing, for rating, for reviewing, for doing all the things on all the different platforms that we have out there. Wherever you do get this podcast, we appreciate it, whether you're listening or whether you're watching. Thank you so much for entertaining us and enabling us to do this podcast on a continual basis. We will be back here again at the normal time in that we will record next Monday, and it will be out on Tuesday, and we will have some MLS action to talk about as the MLS playoffs get ready to kick off in the 25th year of Major League Soccer. Playoffs are upon us. All right, we'll talk again next week. And until then, size the day.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.